So I want to talk about starting a campaign. I'm sure there's tons of advice out there on how to start a campaign, but this is more about old school. And I want to talk about starting your old school campaign in medias res, which is a technique, in case you aren't familiar with the terminology, uh, of starting in the middle of the action, basically. Um, it comes from epic poetry originally. The classic example is the great work of poetry by Homer, the Iliad, which begins 9 years into the Trojan War and ends before the Trojan War is ended. For those who don't know, the Trojan War is not told entirely in the Iliad, even though by its name you might think so. It is the events surrounding when Achilles and Agamemnon have a dispute over the disposition of a slave woman, a woman they have taken captive, a priestess of Athena. Anyway, it's been a little while since I read the Iliad. Anyway, the disposition causes Achilles to drop out of the fighting, and this sets off a series of events that end with the confrontation between Achilles and fuck. Why am I blaming? Why am I blanking on his name? Achilles and Hector. I wanted to say Horus for some reason. Achilles and Hector being defeated and dragged around the walls of Troy by the victorious Achilles in an act of humiliation for the body of Hector, and this it will lead to a fatefully poor outcome for Achilles eventually, but that is not the subject of the story. And just like that's not the subject of the story, that's not the subject of this video. Starting in media race in a role playing game is sort of a first act of railroading almost. I am not saying that to speak against it, but I'm just being plain. You begin the players with something already going on because it's not a bad idea. It's actually a wonderful idea. And I do that a lot with my campaigns. And every time I don't do it, I think back and go, why didn't I just start the campaign here instead of there? I wanted them to go ahead and be there. So why not? So I'll just give examples and why I think this is a good idea and how it. So a generic example would be starting the campaign as you after a shipwreck. The shipwreck happens before the events of the campaign really begin. The campaign begins. Having trouble speaking. I bit my tongue really bad yesterday. The campaign begins with the players already on the ship as it's foundering. In an old school D&D game, for example, they're going to have equipment and stuff, and you can go ahead and have part of the kickoff to the adventure of them trying to get their gear, get their armor, their weapons, possibly a mule or something like that off the boat, or maybe even they had enough money to buy a mount, not just a mule, but perhaps even a riding horse, off the boat into the water and onto dry land. That's actually it sounds nice and exciting. The downside of it is if the players don't act decisively enough, they lose some of the gear they bought as their starting equipment, which might sound somewhat unfair, but So just keep that in mind. Players might not be super happy with the fact that they're spent. They got enough gold starting out. They managed to get a hold of a a light warhorse or something, and they'd expect that they'd be able to have that for the first adventure. But instead, it's in the hold of the caravel, the carack, the galleon, the galley, whatever it is, and sinks into the sea and dies. I can put a bit of a damper on the very first minutes of the campaign. So if you don't want to do that, you can always start with them already on the beach, and the equipment they have is the equipment they managed to grab. Possibly even that the fact that the riding horse they have is not their own riding horse. Whoever's the owner is in the ocean dead. There can be other survivors, and there can be some interaction there. But the main thing is to get the game going right away. And where they foundered, where the ship came to rest. That's why I would probably start out with the storm, with them trying to gather their own equipment, get it off. I wouldn't make that too hard either. Wouldn't want the player to die, the characters to die in the attempt to get to the beach. But having a little danger, make them a little afraid isn't going to hurt. And then having them be on an area of beach, perhaps even, because it's old school, might even have it where they found her right next to a ruin. Perhaps the ruin caused the ship to founder. Maybe there's something within the ruins that lets out into the sea. Perhaps the ruins are haunted by a ghost or some undead. I wouldn't probably be a ghost for first level characters. Zombies and skeletons are sufficient danger. But perhaps it's also some sort of a mermaid or a merman or some other beneficial sea creature, or at least neutral, who's been taken captive, and perhaps it's using some power of its own to cause ships to founder, so that the inhabitants of the dungeon, which could be a wizard with a special magic item that allows them to control undead, or a cleric, evil cleric controlling undead, or it could be orcs, goblins, kobolds, who with a clever leader who is using the power of some helpless sea creature to draw the ship into the rocks, and they go and attack the survivors, loot the ship, the party. So it kicks off right away with that sort of setting. They get to dry land. Right as they get to dry land, they start hearing the screams of other survivors. Definitely one thing you would definitely want in this situation is not to have the captain of the ship be a leveled character, or at least not be leveled above the party. If your party's starting out at first level in the traditional way, your captain should probably be either a zero level human or a first level fighter, or maybe a first level thief, but not a fourth level fighter who's going to be able to bail the party out in dangerous situations. And that is the sort of scenario that you should be in. If you want to start your adventure at the dungeon door, that is also in Mayday Race. That is nothing wrong with that. The party is at the door. How they all got there, that's just backstory. You just tell them. You can read a little paragraph of box text if you really have to. Which is actually not a bad. It's one of the few times I would support using box text just to kick things off. You want to start them right at the door to the dungeon. What's good though about the shipwreck thing is that they were headed somewhere. Obviously, that can be part of the backstory. They've not reached that place yet, and here's a ruin, and here's an adventure. Here's something going on. They get involved in that after they've completed that adventure, which hopefully should only last that one session. The next thing they do is go on to their original destination. That is so that the adventure is completely into the party's hands. If the dungeon is not completed in that if the first adventure, I shouldn't call it a dungeon, but if it's a dungeon, which is since old school dungeon, so it's a haunted tower or a small ruin with a complex of a few rooms underneath it. You should that way the party is already there dungeon delving first session. Really useful too for introduction of brand new characters. They don't have to wait and figure it out. You know, I think the players will figure out if you have people being abducted off the beach, screams in the jungle beyond, or the bleak forest beyond, or you see people being dragged off of the beach towards a obvious ruin, or even just have things coming from the ruins right away. Have the party be the first victims. They don't have to watch. So just kick it off in mid race like that. Now, I've done it a lot of different ways, and I've done the in media race thing, and I think the in media race is the superior option. One way I started off 3 campaigns. I've talked about this in the previous video, where they were basically at the door to the adventure. It wasn't a dungeon, it wasn't exactly a ruin, but there was this old keep. The party starts right at the keep, and the first adventurers that go into the keep, they clear it out of the bad guys, and they usually have enough XP treasure to level up. And that was a pretty good, and wasn't an adventure I created. It was from Dungeon Magazine's called Falcon's Peak. It's a really groovy adventure, and a pretty good. Really groovy for intro adventure. There's a lot of different things going on. It's not super complicated. It's dangerous. Players need to think. It gets them right into the mood, and then go on with the rest of the campaign. And perhaps they have a little fortress in the middle of the wilderness that will be their home for the rest of the campaign. When I started my Shadow World campaign, the very first time, I did the smart thing with that, and I wanted to get the players involved in the setting right away. So instead of giving my players 6 pages of background on the setting and really delving into their backgrounds over much, I just had them, they're on their way to a location. They come across a small army of undead being led by a priest Arnak. If you know the setting, you'll know that. If you don't know the setting, it's a fucking great setting, so you should probably check it out. Towards a village. And the party has to go, the party goes and runs to warn the village. And I, of course, being me, had to have something weird going on at the village already. So there's a civil war going on. I'm trying to introduce the fact that there's a civil war going on. There are various evil factions. There's an evil faction that has already taken over this village, and they are doing naughty, evil, wicked things to the helpless villagers. And yet there is another evil thing, a small army of undead being led by a priest Arnak to that village that has no interest in helping the mercenary company that's acting like brigands in the village. So the party goes into the village. Also want to introduce them to the fact there's some unusual stuff going on with the brigands. I have a couple monsters with the brigands that could pass for human. The party has a huge conflict with uh, um, the brigands. While the fight is going on with the brigands, suddenly the undead attack. The party's now, the undead are attacking the brigands and the adventurers. The adventurers are attacking the undead and the brigands. So I have no set outcome of that, obviously. If the party retreats from it and the villagers, the brigands, and the undead will figure it out, with probably the villagers being annihilated. It ended up with the party, I believe the first time they ended up just more or less winning out, but they got hammered pretty hard. They ended up having to lay up and heal naturally for a little while, and that happened a lot early on. So it got the players used to a lot of things in the setting. They found out right away about some important parts of the setting: the pre-Sarnak, the Civil War in Rakan, which is the name of the kingdom, the Empire of Rakan, and found out about a few weird monsters that don't exist in D&D. Not that they're completely revolutionary monsters, but they were a monster type that the players had never run into, even though they were very much veteran players of Dungeons and Dragons. And that's what In Media Race can do. You can just get them, you just kick it right off. Just get them right into the middle of it. And I introduced them. These are important things that remained important throughout the rest of the whole campaign. The plot, the Civil War storyline went on through the whole thing. My campaigns are very much open world, but the players are involved in these interesting ideas right from the beginning. They aren't. The Civil War is not something going on in the background for them. They're immediately a part of it. Even though that's in their backgrounds that they would be a part of the Civil War, it has a visceral connection. They saw the atrocities being committed by these mercenaries serving the usurper, and they saw the underlying darkness also that is stalking the land. Two important parts. The Civil War storyline gets wrapped up, and it leads towards this Armageddon scenario. And the players it's a part of the story, it's a part of the campaign right from the beginning. If you want to introduce the party into the campaign, just put it right there in the beginning. Let them get involved. Let them uncover the mysteries. Let them unravel the story, what's going on. I was going to use storyline, but I don't run a narrative campaign, but there's always something going on in the background. And in Shadow World specifically, I'm using a very much a large meta narrative. Not the players have to get directly involved constantly, but they do end up because it's going on. They become interested. They become intrigued. And they begin working towards these goals. But it happens organically because they've started out. They're not pursuing these ideas. They're not pursuing these ideas abstractly. It's concrete. The effects of the Civil War has an effect on them personally, because they've seen it firsthand as players. And then they continue on their way to this military camp where they're going to meet up with one of the characters' fathers, where they're going to be introduced to an NPC who becomes a big part of the group. He has his own storyline. The party ends up getting swept up in the events happening in the setting, which is not a quiet setting that's going to just lay back and let the players go at their own pace. The players can go at their own pace, but the events will outrun them, and they have to be aware of that. They can be aggressive and try and get ahead of them, and they can be aggressive and fail. But they can hold back, try and get stronger, let the events get ahead of them, and then they're playing catch up, but they're stronger. If they try and get ahead of the events, maybe they can stop one of the events from happening. I don't know. That's the way I run. But there are a bunch of different ways to start your campaign in Media Race. The the wonderful BX module, of course, the Lost City, which is on my shelf right over here. The Lost City is in Media Race. The party is trekking through the desert, part of a caravan, and they are forced to take shelter in the ruins, just as I had said to the foundering ship. And they explore the ruins. It's the first place that they go. It's a mini mega dungeon almost. Kicks it right off. I learned this lesson though about in Media Race from watching other people too, from them messing up, and having an adventure that they designed. They want the players to go on to be the introductory adventure, and that first session, that it's always much more forgiving to be a little bit railroady, because your character, you have no control of your characters till the moment they're on the scene. So it's all right to just put them where you want them to be. If the adventure is going through a dungeon, just put them at the door to the dungeon. If the adventure is at a ruins, put them, and you can make the lead up to it exciting. But the closer you get them to just being right there, the easier it is to get what you want. Anyway, I'm getting kind of tired of biting my tongue again. But that's about all I have to say on this subject. I think starting a campaign in Media Race for old school works really well. You can introduce lots of stuff right at the beginning. Of course, don't try to introduce too much. It will overwhelm the characters, and also the more laser focused you are on what they're doing that first session, the easier it is for them to get involved, and the easier it is for them to get laser focused on those things. Starting out in Media Race also keeps them from chasing down red herrings, which can get them frustrated in the first. So I'll give you an example of a campaign that was started in Media Race, but didn't quite succeed. It was a friend of mine named Rich. He started out the campaign. We're at an inn. We go to bed that night. Our stuff gets stolen. The three characters who are involved, it's me, my buddy Rick, and this other guy named Danny. We wake up angry, and we find out that our weapons aren't gone, our armor isn't gone, but our gold and our horses and a bunch of other stuff. We blame it on the innkeeper, and we basically massacre everyone in the inn. Our first level characters just straight up butcher everybody in the inn. The game master, this guy Rich, was, to say the least, extremely upset. That was not what we were supposed to do. We were not supposed to kill everybody, like kill half the people in the village. We were supposed to investigate. Well, it's nice that the way he started out, but the most obvious culprits would have been the people in the inn. And when they said no, none of our characters had the ability to detect lie or whatever, so we wouldn't accept no as an answer. So we wanted answers. And yeah, I think we completely derailed. We probably killed the supposed quest givers or whatever. But it would have been easier for him to have started the even further in and say, all your stuff has been, all your gold and your mounts have been stolen. The people in the village are innocent, and they point you in the direction of whatever it was the adventure he wanted us to go on. And we were on our way there. But we got enough gold out of we killed everybody in the inn. We took over the inn. We took all their gold. We could buy our new horses. We didn't need to go looking for our crap. We had our stuff. We had enough gold to take care of, to buy new horses or whatever. And it was pretty much the only session of that game we ever played, which I think was funny. But it was, and if you're playing old school, you have to be ready for your players to go rogue, go off script. In fact, that's the reason why you don't have scripts. You let them do what they want. And what they want to do, if they're playing not particularly heroic characters, we weren't. Me, Rick, and Danny, I think Rick's character was lawful evil. I'm pretty sure my character was either lawful evil or lawful neutral. And Danny's character, I think, was chaotic neutral. We weren't really all that interested in, looking into whether it was, brownies or fairies or pixies who had stolen our stuff. We wanted our stuff, and the obvious culprits were the people in the inn. And that did not work out too well. And you should be aware that things like that might happen. There was nothing guaranteeing that my players would run to that village and try and warn them, and thereby find out about the goings on at the village. And there's no guarantee that they were going to fight the undead. And in fact, I thought perhaps what they would do is attack the undead army first. It's not, when I say it's an army, it was a bunch of skeletons, zombies. Though in Rollmaster and in Shadow World, that's a pretty dangerous. They aren't easy to kill. Undead are a little tougher in Rollmaster than they are in D&D. Old school D&D. So, I would, so there's a lot of options. I did not assume that they were going to go to the village. I had it there, was a possibility. They didn't attack the undead first and then retreat to the village to try and get healing. They went to the village first, try and warn it, try and see if they can get help. Found out the village was not good. They had a full-on big fight at the village. Went on for many, many rounds. By the time they had almost won, the undead showed up and started murdering everybody. And and that's that's one of my tips. I think you should. I don't think there's a problem with starting things in media race. And I don't think that I think for old school, a little railroading right at the very beginning is completely forgivable. It's railroad. You're railroading right up until the minute you say this is the camp. Whether you say you guys are in a tavern and meeting for the first time, that's DM has control right up to that moment. What the players do from that moment on in old school is up to the players, and you react to what they do. But that's why I don't really consider it railroading, because it's just what happened before the campaign begins. From that point on, the campaign is under the control of the players, or it should be, in old school style. I think that's about all I have to say about this subject. If you did actually watch this video and like it, please subscribe.